on. I just don't give her my camera. I'm picking it on. Sorry about that.
Hi my lovelies! As some of you know, we've been revisiting the whole world of Raina Telgemeier on my channel over the past few months, and today's video is yet another installment, only our story isn't an autobiography this time, and our main character isn't Raina, though the story is loosely based upon real events. According to Raina's website, Drama is a story of Callie, a girl in middle school who loves stage crew, theater, and has twin best friends who are gay. The characters in that story are based on real people, real friends of mine. In high school, I had two best friends who were gay twin brothers, and our relationship pretty much mirrors what you see on the page, except I fictionalized it and made it for a young audience. Today's kids really have the privilege of seeing their identities commonly represented in TV shows, books, etc. Storytelling in general has only continued to become so much more inclusive. Majority of my childhood, I felt this like lingering confusion almost for my lack of interest in men. Like I was broken or something, because that's what society wants you to believe. And I'm glad children today, for the most part, don't have to experience that. But even then, I do have my big three of like earliest forms of representation I remember from my childhood, which were Bert and Ernie from Sesame Street, that one episode of Good Luck Charlie with the two moms, and Drama, a graphic novel by Raina Telgemeier. This video is gonna be a yapathon, so let's get right into it. Our story follows a 7th grader named Callie Marin as she works on her school's spring production of Moon Over Mississippi. Callie's interest in drama stems from the time her parents took her and her little brother to see a production of Les Mis. I had a musical phase. I'm not that deep into musicals, so if I mispronounce that, I am so sorry. It's funny that like I loved this book growing up because I actually get asked often if like I was ever a theater kid, and I was supposed to be in a production of Clue my freshman year of high school, but it got canceled because of COVID. I wasn't like in the cast, I was like stage crew, but it was like fully, we were ready to like perform it, and then we never got to perform it because of COVID. But my point is, I was not a theater kid because that teacher who was running our theater department, very evil. So I like to say in another life, I would have been a theater kid. And the funny thing is I always get comments about my voice and like delivery with my video essays. And when I was doing that production of Clue, I almost had to be an understudy. I was like a contender, and so I had to say some lines, and literally I got no feedback besides my volume. It was almost like I was a natural because at that point I had never taken like a theater course. Anyway, sorry, that was a bit of an off-script tangent, but I knew one of you was gonna ask. Now, at first, Callie aspired to be on stage like the actors were, but slowly she discovered she just wasn't a natural singer. However, her love for musicals and theater never died, so when 6th grade rolled around and she saw a flyer for the stage crew, she decided to give it a shot. And Callie specifically fell in love with set design, and that's what we see her super passionate about over the course of this book. Now, this book kind of starts on like a crazy note. I had totally forgot about this part. But basically, Callie is walking home with her friends, Greg and Matt, and their brothers. That's like important to the plot because this gets brought up like later on toward the end. But Greg wants to talk to Callie about something alone, so the two go to a nearby park where he explains that his girlfriend Bonnie broke up with him. When he tries to explain like what happened, I immediately was reminded of like the I hate my girlfriend trope where like,
you know, this man is dating this girl, but like it doesn't really seem like he likes her, so like why are they dating?
Like one of the first things that comes out of his mouth when he's like talking about this girl is that I think he says like I tried to go to her lame dance recitals. And mind you, this isn't me being in favor of this girl or anything. I don't even like her. I think she's pretty mean throughout this book. But it was just something I noticed, okay? Anyway, the important context here is that Callie has a thing for Greg, but he has no clue. So Callie takes this as her opportunity, kissing Greg on the cheek, and at first he seems confused. But then Callie points out what I just said, that all he's ever said about Bonnie was that she's annoying, stuck up, and only cares about herself. Of course, he emphasized that like, but Bonnie actually liked him. But Callie makes the point of saying, you know, Bonnie's not the only one that likes him. Long story short, they make out. Nothing really comes of it. He tries to get back together with Bonnie, and he starts avoiding and ignoring Callie. He makes sporadic appearances throughout the book, but we don't really get closure on this situation till the end. So kind of keep this in the back of your mind. As for her school's production of Moon Over Mississippi, the stage crew picks roles, which includes Callie as set designer, Liz as costume designer, Delphina as makeup artist, Matt on the lights, Miko in the sound booth, and Sanjay helping with carpentry. After these specifics and more are discussed, posters are then made for auditions for Moon Over Mississippi. And while putting up one of said posters, Callie meets a pair of twins named Jesse and Justin. Their backstory is their dad is really strict about grades, which is why Callie hasn't seen them around before. Despite both of them really having this like love and passion for theater, only Justin is actually trying out for a role. I guess his dad really values Jesse being this like obedient son, and so next year when they're in high school, he already just pictures himself having to disappear into the books forever this time. Little does Callie know though that these would soon become her new best friends. And after she finished speaking to them for the first time, her friend Liz, the one doing the costume designs, asks if she saw Greg or something because she recognized this same kind of like happy, in love smirk on her face. Only Callie's confused why she even asked that question. Crazy foreshadowing actually, because she runs into Greg like the very next day. But as I said, he's very absent for the most part throughout this book and isn't important to the central plot. One day after school, she ends up meeting up with Jesse and Justin by coincidence because they're going to the mall, and Callie's plan that day was to visit a bookstore that's by the mall. So the three decide to walk together and hang out, make a, fun day out of it. But before they go, Callie decides to kind of use this opportunity of hanging out with two boys to her advantage to make Greg jealous. Fortunately, they don't seem to really mind this and even seem concerned on why Callie would want to make him jealous. So after that, they just go to the mall as planned and end up having a really fun time, browsing through some stores together and even getting boba tea, which was Callie's first time trying it. Then they go to the bookstore, not really to buy anything, shocker, but because Callie loves to look at this one specific book that was published in 1992 and has photographs of Broadway set and stage design from the 19s and 20s. Once they finish up at this bookstore, Justin then wants to show Callie what he's been working on, and the two of them actually end up putting on a performance of sorts for Callie because Jesse's been singing the other part to help Justin rehearse for Moon Over Mississippi. And Callie, she's so impressed by this. She even says that they sound like they could be on Broadway. Once again, kind of emphasizing her point of like, you should both audition, you're both talented. But when Justin kind of chimes in about like, oh, I've tried, like, but he doesn't want to, this is when Callie instead brings up stage crew, suggesting that Jesse might want to get involved behind the scenes instead if he's too shy to be up on stage. And this really piques his interest. To circle back kind of to the topic of Greg, you know who's been acting weird too? His brother. While at the mall yesterday browsing, Callie got her friend Liz this like tomato pincushion since she'll be designing costumes, and it'll really come in handy for her. At the same time, Matt walks into class overhearing this conversation a bit and asks if she got it from a specific store. And when Callie just kind of responds with normal banter, he makes this like weird kind of mean, snarky comment, but Liz tells her not to pay too much attention to it, not focus on him so much because she still loves her present and that's all that matters. So that day at lunch, when Justin asks if he could sit with Callie since Jesse is tutoring, instead of going to sit in the cafeteria like normal with her stage crew friends, Callie and Justin end up eating outside and she fills him in kind of about this whole Greg situation. But it's Justin's reaction to the mention of Greg that confuses her. Not in like a homophobic way, but because Callie hasn't really met any gay people before. Like she hesitates to even say the word gay out loud, like it's some kind of slur. But ultimately the conversation is really sweet. She gives Jesse a big hug. Then her stage friends come over and it kind of gets a little awkward because Justin's only ever told Callie and Jesse. So they think this is like a romantic hug and they think because they were sitting somewhere separate that this is like romantic. Matt, who I mentioned was already being snarky towards Callie, then decides to make a comment about how she shouldn't get too attached to the performers because it will only distract from what's important. Callie's response to this is, would you rather us just ignore each other completely? To which he legitimately responds, yes. Who says that? But speaking of performers, today is also the auditions for Moon Over Mississippi. Since Justin is performing, Jesse and Callie decide to sit in the audience and watch all the auditions together. Callie, even as a last-ditch effort, ends up auditioning to try to encourage Jesse to do so, and even though she was awful and he doesn't end up auditioning, he still really appreciates the gesture that she did that for him. Unfortunately, the next day, Justin finds out he didn't get the leading role of his dreams, but he still got a role, and that's all that really matters. Initially, though, he is very upset and even lashes out over it because, like, they just said what I kind of said about how it least he got a role. But it's kind of never mentioned again, as he's usually just this really positive and outgoing person. From there though, with a established cast, the show progresses and Callie gets to spend a lot more time with Jessie than Justin, since he's a part of the stage crew with her. Something I didn't mention from the interaction where Justin comes out to Callie is that she asks a specific question: is your brother gay? To which Justin denies he is. So under this impression that he's probably straight, Callie eventually develops feelings for him. I mean, from the moment they met, they kind of had this deeper connection, her and Jessie. They've always been like more drawn to each other in a way. So she brings this up to Liz because she's wondering to herself, does he seem interested in me? Or like, is this in my head? I don't know. Liz totally clocks that Justin's gay and says that she thinks Jessie is personally just shy, which is true, and I think that's why Callie hasn't been able to figure out if he could be interested, because unlike his brother, Jessie is way more like closed off as a person. But when Liz mentions the 8th grade formal and Callie had found out that same day he'd never been to a dance, she really wanted to ask him, or for him to ask her. But instead she ends up texting and asking if like they'd want to go back to the bookstore with her sometime, but doesn't really get a response. That is until the next day, because that text actually gave him an idea of going to a different specialty bookstore in town that he thought she'd really like, and plus their dad has been really wanting to meet Callie. In Callie's perspective, she went into this expecting it to be more like a date, and she even told Liz, I asked him on a date instead, even though she said you too, like referring to both Jessie and Justin. So they go to the bookstore, but as they're leaving, Justin brings up wanting to find a date for the 8th grade formal, not like a date, you know, because he's gay, but a friend to bring along with him and take photos with, because it'll still be fun. He doesn't think his dad is ready to, you know, process that information yet, and frankly, he's not sure he's ready. So Callie suggests that he could ask Liz, hoping that Jessie would get the hint about asking her. But when she says, what about you, Jessie, he gets all like freaked out, so she just drops the topic entirely. The weird thing is though, the next day Callie runs into Greg because he's picking up Matt, and they chat for a minute while he's waiting. Callie brings up like the 8th grade formal after she asks like what's been going on in his life, to which he says nothing, and that really confuses her because it's 8th grade, you know, for him he's wrapping up everything, and as a 7th grader it's like, well, you have so much going on in your life. So he asks if she's going with anyone, to which she says only if someone asks her, and then he just leaves. Like Matt is finished and they just leave. This guy, he's a nothing burger. Every time he pops in this story, I can't. No wonder like I forgot that whole plot of this book until I reread it. Anyway, after all the preparations, we've finally reached the official dress rehearsal for Moon Over Mississippi, and immediately there are a couple hiccups. Our lead actor, West, has an awful cough. Callie can't seem to get the canon to work how she like envisioned it, so it just looks super lame at the moment. Liz has a lot on her plate when it comes to costumes, and tickets, they're not selling well. So stakes are immediately very, very, very high, with not much time left to prepare for the show. Regarding Callie's dilemma with the canon, she decides to take it home and continue troubleshooting because she thinks she's really close to getting it right. Then 3 days later, they decide to do a sneak peek of the production in the cafeteria to encourage more students to go buy tickets to see the full show. This is where we get to see Callie's canon in action for the first time, and compared to the first time she shot it on stage, it was truly an improvement. However, before they get to finish the sneak peek, people are already like flooding the auditorium to buy tickets. And soon enough, it's already time for the opening night of Moon Over Mississippi. Things were actually going relatively well, and as planned, up until the second night, when our main characters are going in for the kiss, and Wes slips and falls. Luckily, they only had 2 scenes left to get through, and the rest of the show, it went smoothly. But little did anyone know that that would be the least of their problems, okay? The final show was going to be the most challenging yet. It was a bit of a disaster. But before we get there, something I didn't mention earlier when talking about Greg was he is no longer with Bonnie. And that's because she started dating her co-star for this play, West. Jessie has also been helping tutor Bonnie since he's really into academics and it gets you extra credit, I guess. Anyway, they were checking in with West about his slip on stage earlier, and luckily he's not too injured or anything, but he takes this opportunity to thank Jessie for helping Bonnie because she's actually actually passing now. He immediately though gets this like strange expression on his face and decides to tell him about how Bonnie had asked him to help her cheat on her last test. Jesse obviously didn't do it and figures she must have studied harder as a result, but he did decide to resign as her tutor as a result of her asking him to cheat. And West is fully on his side, saying that that was really messed up of Bonnie to do. But back to the final show, from the start, things were just all over the place, okay? From water randomly being spilled on the stage to West deciding to break up with Bonnie right before their final performance. Why would you do it now? Like, bro, just wait till the show is over at this point. I don't know how he didn't think that was gonna, like, interfere, okay? Then, as if things can't get worse, the final confetti popper goes off, and as a result, the cannon is nowhere near as cool or show-stopping as it was intended to be, and it looks really lame. Due to the breakup, Bonnie gets really emotional while performing, and so Callie tells everyone it's probably because she just got broken up with, but I guess nobody else knew that happened though, and it caught everyone off guard. Although they broke up like in the hallway, it was like a public space, but she was the only one who saw it. This eventually though causes Bonnie to barricade herself in a storage closet and refuse to perform the remainder of the show. But you know, we have an alternate, right? Where's the alternate? Oh yeah, they're not answering the phone. At first, West is being shoved in one direction to talk to Bonnie, but at that same moment, he needs to be on stage, so then they shove him the other direction. At this point, nobody knows what's happening as the show gets closer and closer to the scenes with Bonnie again. But hey, let's remember, who else knows this part by heart? Who else really knows how to put on a show and sing? The answer is Jesse. And so that's who walks out on stage in a dress, performing his heart out, and even does the kiss with West in the name of theater. Now, if you haven't already heard of this book from being a fan of Raina's other books, or other book at the time, because drama came out before the sequel to Smile called Sisters. Anyway, you may have heard of this book for another reason, and that's because it's had many appearances on the banned book list. Starting in 2014, 2 years after the book was published at number 10, and oh, what was the reasoning you may ask? For being quote-unquote sexually explicit. Sexual where? The kiss is probably the most like out there gay thing that happens in this book. And again, it's for a school play. The book would continue to make appearances on the list again in 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019, with the reasoning slowly changing to LGBTQ plus themes and or characters. I just felt I had to mention this though because it goes to show just the mere existence of like queer people in storytelling is enough to make people uncomfortable. Back to our story though, despite all the challenges, the rest of the show pretty much goes smoothly, and it's a huge hit with the crowd still. Of course, after the show there's a lot of drama, specifically with Bonnie, because people are royally pissed off at her. And then Matt starts being Matt, and it's like, okay, Jesse saved the damn show, shut your mouth. Anyway, when Callie finally gets to see Jesse again after the show, he finally suggests that two of them should go to the 8th grade formal, and her worries are at bay for now. When I read this book, I always loved Callie's look for the dance. She finds this vintage dress in the like scary costume closet in the school's basement. Then when I went to my junior prom in 2022, I remember being told I looked like Callie in real life because I wore this like shimmery blue dress and I had purple hair at the time. And it's funny, I was actually going to put my hair in like a bun, like updo style, so it would have been even more spot on, but I changed it last minute because my hair was similar to this length, so it was just not going to look how I wanted it to look. But yeah, at the time and like still to this day, that was such a huge compliment to me because I thought she was so cool when I read this book for the first time as a kid. Anyway, we see this like mini collage of the group before the dance, and everything seems to be going smoothly. Everyone has fun once they get there until the slow dance portion happens. Jesse ends up freaking out, getting really nervous, and excusing himself to the bathroom. However, Jesse didn't really have to go to the bathroom and just ends up disappearing for like 2 hours, which really concerns Callie. After asking around and being unable to find him, she goes with Liz to the bathroom to talk about it, ends up crying, and then they end up losing their minds like laughing about how Callie's makeup is messed up. So then the girls, they start messing up their hair and makeup on purpose. They get a picture together and they start having fun dancing together by themselves. A little while later though, Justin comes looking for Callie after hearing that she'd been looking for Jesse. and points to the door leading outside. But when Callie steps outside, it's just Jesse and West all by themselves. West quickly runs back inside and Callie gets really upset at Jesse. Initially, she calms herself down, but then Jesse makes this comment of, I guess you shouldn't fall in love with every nice guy you meet. And when I first read this book, I remember thinking, why did he say that? Like, I feel like that's the last thing you should tell your friend who you think might have feelings for you. But at the same time, I want to make it clear, he does not need to reciprocate anything. He does not owe that to Callie at all. But that was just like the last thing I expected to come out of his mouth, and I completely forgot about this part as well until I reread the book. It like all came back to me. I was like, oh my god. So because of this, Callie storms off again and runs into Greg. Like, I mean, literally runs into him. I guess he had come with Bonnie, but she ended up ditching him and the dance for some high school freshmen. Shortly after bumping into each other, they end up leaving the dance and they go to the same park as at the beginning of this book, sitting on that very same bench together. It's here that Greg finally apologizes for being so caught up with Bonnie when he could have been with Callie instead this whole time, and straight up asks if she'll give him another shot. Greg also reveals that the reason he had become so distant was partially due to his brother Matt, who got really mad at him because he also had a crush on Callie, which in a weird and twisted way explains his total shift in demeanor towards her. Though I think having a crush on someone is never an excuse to be mean to them, and I hate everyone who's always like, oh, like that guy is being mean to you? Well, that means he likes you. Shut the fuck up. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Why are we normalizing this? Like, I hate it so much. I think it's less normalized now, but that has definitely been a thing for a long time, I hear. Anyway, throughout all this, Callie is just even more confused than she thought she was before all of this. And all Greg has to say in response to her confusion is, don't be confused, be my girlfriend. To quote Callie, are you for real? Luckily, Callie knows her worth, and the night ends with Greg going in to kiss Callie, but Callie rejects him, and she decides to walk home by herself. Let's circle back to Jesse, though. What happened with that? Well, the school year is wrapping up, and the two end up crossing paths again, and they make up. Callie was going to apologize since it was his formal, and she freaked out, but Jesse recognizes that he did royally screw up. As suspected, basically, he and West are, like, confirmed to be talking, though West doesn't know if he's like gay or bi yet. However, Justin thinks that West does really like Jesse, and Callie couldn't agree more because, you know, he's a really likable person in her opinion. The conversation is honestly really sweet, and Jesse thanks Callie for helping him really break out of his shell this year and admits if he was going to like any girl, it would have been Callie. I guess Liz is really mad at Callie for ditching her at the end of the dance, but Jesse is determined to make things right because it was totally his fault that she stormed off. In the meantime, Callie waits by the lockers and she has a conversation with Matt, who apologizes for how he treated her all year, realizing after the fact that it was very unfair to take it out on her. Anyway, Liz and Callie end up making up, and the stage crew is set to have their final meeting of the year. Remember that one time that Jesse, Justin, and Callie went to the mall and they introduced her to boba tea? Well, Callie decides to see if Lauren, the stage manager, could change the meeting location last minute so that they could all have boba together. And then, to top it all off, since Lauren is graduating soon, they need to find a new stage manager. And you know who his top pick is? Callie, who deemed herself more than worthy in his opinion. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. As my titles suggest, I swear these books, they don't get talked about as much as they should. I love Raina. Honestly, she's still by far one of my favorite authors to this day. As always, shout out to my Patreon members. There's currently new bonus content for you guys up on there. I talked about the underrated masterpiece that is Surf's Up. VidCon is also coming up around the corner, and I will be there. I met a handful of you guys last time, which was super cool, so if you see me again, say hi, I don't bite. I just got a new vlog camera to revamp my second channel in general this year, but also to make a better VidCon vlog than I did last year, so stay tuned for that. That'll be my comeback to my second channel. I will update the community tab as soon as I can regarding upcoming video topics. I'm still working on some stuff behind the scenes. But with that being said, comment down below your favorite part of drama or your favorite Raina Telgemeier book, and I will see you guys in my next video.